This episode is sponsored by First Home Mortgage.
Wow. So funny enough, that's when I started full-time in real estate, 2007. Nice. So that's
good year.
Yeah, it was a good year. Right before, and at least in my world, that was right at the peak of real estate, and then it just went crazy down for the next several years. So I got to enjoy that experience. Hopefully your
character.
It did.
Absolutely. Franchising is it's changed my life. I'll tell you my success story. My success story is simple. People talk about their Bentleys and their Ferraris, and they're posting all this nonsense online. My success story is that I'm 47 years old, been self-employed 20 years. I've never missed a soccer game, became a soccer coach. I challenge you, how many people can actually say that?
Hello, everybody. This is Matt Rhine with All Roads Lead to Real Estate. And I have a guest today that's a little bit out of the box, at least for me, if you're a frequent listener of my podcast. And the reason I say that is because I have somebody outside of our little bubble, this Maryland bubble I like to live in, so to speak. And I have a lot of guests that are local experts. And the reason I did this, and this is the first time I've allowed someone, which is crazy enough, I get a lot of people reaching out to join this podcast. And this individual sparked my interest because it's really in line with what I do with our clients. And so, as everyone knows, I have a decent size rental portfolio. I've helped people buy large projects. I have multiple, multi-million dollar assets under contract for other clients to be able to purchase. And so I am all about the real estate world, and I wanted to expand upon that because if you're listening and you're interested for those reasons, I certainly want you to be introduced to the idea of the franchise model. And so the expert that I have today is Giuseppe Grammatico, and hopefully I'm saying that correct. Am I saying that correct?
You got it. Perfect.
Excellent. And so he is a franchise expert. He's an entrepreneur. He's an author, and he's a podcast host himself. I know we all, growing trees these days. And so he's really someone that is going to be able to speak more specifically to the franchise world. Because I have a lot of people that have asked me, Matt, why don't you get into franchises? I don't own any. I don't participate in the model. I am very curious. And I'll tell you right at the front, I almost got into one when I was in my 20s many years ago. And it's SaladWorks. Are you familiar with SaladWorks?
Yes. Yep, I am.
So I almost went into that world. I was so fascinated by the margins on salad. I was very excited. And so I have so many questions, just organic questions for you. And so I want to first make sure your information's out there. So if you want to check out at the end of this or at any point you want to listen to Giuseppe, his information is out there. He wrote a book called The Franchise Freedom. It's a manifesto for your financial and time freedom. And his podcast is the Franchise Freedom Podcast. So you can check him out there, and he has 20 plus years of experience doing this. So I want to welcome you to the podcast. Thank you for joining me.
Awesome. It's an honor. I really appreciate it. Looking forward to it. You mentioned real estate, and my gosh, if you look at the franchises out there, they own quite a bit of real estate. If you look at companies like McDonald's, just to name a few.
Yeah. Oh, they from my understanding, that's their bread and butter, right? So that's where they make predominantly most of their money. And so I have questions related to that, of course, but I want to kick it off and try to understand, first off, as we get this education from you, you're trying to educate us, what is your role? So why are you willing to share your time and your wisdom with us today? What's your passion and what exactly do you do in your business?
Yeah, so our goal and my passion is to empower people to think outside the box, that they're not constrained just to their job. There's other things out there. There's business ownership. And a study years ago showed that most people have no idea where to start. They're just overwhelmed by the process or have misconceptions like you need to be a millionaire in order to get into franchising or business ownership, so they don't even bother. So my goal as a miserable corporate executive on Wall Street was to empower people to say, give me 5 minutes. Let me explain to you what a franchise may or may not look like. and that it is not all about fast food. And once people give me 5 minutes, they're like, you know what, I did not realize there are so many options outside the food space, like I don't know, business coaching or expense reduction. So people are just floored that there's so many options out there. So it's really giving people that fighting chance to look elsewhere and potentially hire themselves and become entrepreneurs.
And so where exactly did you start? It sounds like you had some experience, like you said, in corporate America. So what gave you the inkling to start researching this and start going down this path yourself?
Yeah, so at 9 years old, I was working in the family restaurant. We owned an Italian restaurant here in central New Jersey, and loved, the aspects of owning a business. A lot of hours, but I really enjoyed having just full control. Working that business with my family, but realized I didn't want to work those weekends and hours and holidays that we were always stuck catering on Christmas Eve or New Year's Eve, because that's when everyone was having their parties. So decided, you know what, I'm going to be the first person in my family to go to college. Went undergrad, got my graduate degree shortly after, and went the corporate route. Worked on Wall Street for companies like JP Morgan. Loved the investment world, but felt like I had so many managers above me. Too many people controlled my decisions, controlled my future, my destiny within the business. And I said, you know what, there's got to be, other businesses. I always had that itch. So I kind of looked at other businesses, came across a franchise coach and consultant, which is what I do today. And that was over 20 years ago. And he opened up the world of franchising, of having that business in a box, that business on training wheels. And I was shocked at, you don't really need experience in these businesses. You really need that passion and that transferable skill set. So, and fast forward, I worked in corporate America for several years. And in 2007, left JP Morgan to launch my first business.
Wow. So funny enough, that's when I started full-time in real estate, 2007. Oh, nice. So that's
good year.
Yeah, it was a good year. Right before, and at least in my world, that was right at the peak of, of real estate. And then it just went crazy down for the next several years. So I got to enjoy that experience. Hopefully your
character.
It did. It actually made me stick onto my old day job a little bit longer than I wanted to, as a result. But so that's interesting. So when you first started, did you buy a franchise right away prior to leaving JP Morgan, or did you, how did your coach at the time, your consultant that you were working with, how did they get you into this world? That's my biggest thinking, is even a guy like me, I own businesses, but it's not a franchise.
Right.
So how did someone convince you to take that leap of faith?
Yeah, so it's the research. So we started with, even before research, what does this ideal business look like? And the first requirement I had, and it has not changed 20 years later, is recession resistance. I wanted something that was recession resistant. I needed something that was in my backyard, that had very few employees. I had those requirements. I did not want a brick and mortar storefront. A small office would do. And we started there. So instead of looking to see what would match or what was out there, we didn't look at any franchises. We kind of put them aside and said, okay, you want to own a business and you don't want to create the wheel. Agreed? Yes. And you're okay following a system? Yes. Okay. Let's build what this ideal business looks like so that we can go to market to see what's available.
Okay.
Right? Because sometimes you fall in love with the brand to find out it's not available or registered in your state. So we went that route. So we looked at, as I mentioned, the transferable skill sets, the sales and networking background that I had, or I should say skill sets. The investment range, we wanted to keep it under 200,000 at the time, recession resistance, things like that, where I didn't need this big storefront. And as we started to whittle it down, okay, this is what this business looks like. And then we went down the list of brands that were, that they vetted, kind of went down the list, making sure they checked off all those boxes for me to continue the due diligence. So we didn't just look for the hot franchises, we looked for the franchise that met my franchise model, my ideal franchise business.
Well, now I have a starting to understand what the value is, right, of what you do for a living, it sounds like, because a guy like me on the outside, where would I even start?
Right.
And that's interesting. So where did you start? What was your first franchise that caught your attention?
Well, originally it was Subway. Subway was the franchise of choice because that was the hot franchise prior to working with my coach. So he encouraged me to continue working with them
Yeah.
and see how they fit the franchise model. And we found out that it didn't fit it at all. It was the complete opposite. Just because it was a hot franchise and I had a background in food as we owned an Italian restaurant. So we quickly removed that from the mix. We looked at quite a few things from handyman services to residential cleaning. The brand that was sold many years ago, I forget who the new parent company is, was around building services. So I had a small staff of under 5 office staff, and we hired and worked with subcontractors in the area to handle anything around maintaining a building, from cleaning to restoring the floors to even painting. So that was a business that kind of had all those 15 plus revenue streams that we were able to provide and be a one-stop shop for the client.
And so I'm assuming the reality is if that was your dream, that business makes sense. I actually work out 2 days a week with a lady who owns 2 separate cleaning businesses, residential cleaning businesses. I didn't know this until the other day. We rarely talk about work because it's at 5:45 in the morning, but we did. And I found out that she doesn't have a franchise, but she's out there busting her hump out here. And now she has several people working for her. She's no longer cleaning the homes, but she's now the business owner. Right. And so if I were to talk to her and say, why haven't you or should you consider the franchise model as opposed to what she had to do, which is everything herself? So how would you coach her? What proposition would it make sense for her to consider that route?
Yeah, I mean, first off, we go to the very basics. You have to be okay following a system. The whole point of a franchise is that you are going to buy a proven system. You're going to pay a franchise fee once and then an ongoing royalty. If you have no interest there, I'd advise, start it on your own. You don't need that specific franchise. But when you start to do your due diligence and speak with the brands, you'll notice that you'll have an unfair advantage. So number one, speed to market. We'll look at a cleaning franchise. You can pay a franchise fee, essentially go to training the following week and be up and running in less than 90 days. Wow. Within 90 days, you have your legal entity set up, you're trained. Not only that, your marketing is in place and your calendar hopefully is full of appointments, because many of the franchises have a turnkey marketing program as well as a call center. So you have potential customers lined up and ready to go, and you're not figuring anything out. The CRM is set up for you. The chart of accounts in your QuickBooks or whatever software that they're using is all set up. There's nothing to figure out. It's more of, let me monitor and manage the KPIs. Let me review the marketing to make sure it is working. Does it need to be tweaked? Am I getting enough leads, but my close ratio is low? Do I have to make adjustments there, either with the lead generation via the marketing, or does my salesperson, maybe they need to be retrained, or maybe we need to go back to the basics? So you have the system. Literally the day you sign the franchise agreement, the full system is available to you. It may have taken that franchisor 5 years to come up with that system, and you immediately have access to it. So you're paying that franchise fee, you're paying the royalty, and you want to make sure you're getting enough value via that royalty and system to make it worthwhile. And
on average, can you speak in general? Like, I've looked into, for example, the Chick-fil-A model. I know some folks, and I've represented folks that own McDonald's, and several in Maryland, and I've represented folks that have Burger King. It's funny. It's a crazy war I could create. But I've learned a lot through their experiences, and they are doing exceptionally well. Let me just tell you, those are big franchises, and they have done very well for themselves. And but they say it's a lot of vetting, that there are certain areas, and you have to prove yourself before they give you the more lucrative areas, and it's a process. And I think Chick-fil-A, at least that's what I've read and heard, is that's the hardest of all. And they look for a very specific entrepreneur that's going to really dedicate themselves to that one store versus owning 10 McDonald's or 10 Burger King. So I'm assuming it could be wildly different depending on the model.
Wildly different. Yeah. The model and the brands are completely different. Chick-fil-A and Popeyes, or, Wendy's, or, the McDonald's, they're all going to be completely different. Chick-fil-A is definitely the anomaly. Right. Very low entry fee of about, from my understanding, $10,000 to get in, but you don't really own anything. It's more of you're a managing partner, is my understanding. So low investment, you're expected to be there 6 days a week. you could make a great income, but at the exit point, there's nothing to sell, as Chick-fil-A actually owns the business.
Right.
So for people that don't mind working the hours, you're not really getting that time freedom from the business, I guess, is the argument I always make. But it's, they definitely have different requirements, and every franchise is going to be selective in who they work with. So if I bring a family member to, a family to take a look at a franchise, we're going to make sure that they are the ideal franchise avatar. That's what they call it. If you are getting into a cleaning business and the primary role of the franchisee is to go out and network at the chamber, give speeches, jump on podcasts, you need an extrovert. You need someone that can handle that. If you're very introverted, it's probably not going to be the right fit. Even though you may have or had a cleaning business or whatever business you had in the past, they're looking for that specific avatar. So yes, if they don't feel the fit's there, they'll probably tell you on the first or second call. If the fit's not there, why drag it through? So they'll definitely let you know.
Now, as a guy like me, and this might be different from some of the other podcasts you've done, or maybe it's similar. I am busy, right? My day job is such that I work at least 6 days a week. I work crazy hours, 10 to 12 hours a day.
Right.
I have the assets though, right, to be able to, let's say, buy another rental or a building or maybe invest in a franchise, but I cannot give you 20 hours, 30 hours of my week. I don't have it to give. So could a guy or a lady that is doing their thing that has income, they could be a physician, they could be anything that has income that they need to park their assets. Is this possible for them, or is it unrealistic? Because I know how much I have to be inside of my business. And if you own, in my mind, any of these businesses, I think you need to be there to make sure it's successful. How do you coach someone through if they have the money, but maybe not the time?
Great question. That's a very good question. And the simple answer is you're going to be involved. And whether it be full-time or part-time, this is not like, for example, I invest in real estate syndication. There's no involvement. I get a report. Right. If I have a question, I have a contact, or I can shoot an email. Very little involvement, but I know roughly what I'm making, on an annual basis. So I feel in that case, I'm a little bit more limited in return, but I have zero time commitment to there. And I use the proceeds of my main business to reinvest in real estate syndication. That's what I do. I mean, everyone does things differently. With a franchise, it's a business. So it's not a passive opportunity like the stock market or certain real estate deals. You're going to be involved heavily to start. With that being said, can you run a franchise part-time initially? The answer is absolutely. With that being said, number one, you have to understand that the investment is going to be a little bit greater, because you probably will have to pay full-time general manager, maybe give them a little skin in the game, a cut of the action. Also, the franchisor has to allow that. So going back to the ideal franchisee, the franchise avatar, they will have to allow what they call semi-absentee ownership, which is basically keeping your job and running the business on the side. Now, that first year, there's a lot of hours put in, and maybe you're keeping the job and you're running it in the evenings, but you're really working with that general manager to take more of that active role. So yes, the hours can start scaling down, but it's definitely not a passive opportunity. So I like to set the expectation day one.
Well, let's also entice some folks, because if I know I get these calls from past clients, from people, they see what I do, and I'm self-employed, and they think, my God, you get to go to the store when you want to sleep in, you can sleep in, you work for yourself, it's amazing. And I try to describe that. I think I just ran my numbers. I sold about 140 families a home last year. Oh, wow. And so I had 140 bosses. And so it represented close to $70 million in assets in order that calendar year in totality. And so I had decent income, but I had all these bosses. It is nothing like what people probably anticipate, which is you have all this amazing freedom. And so if I were sitting there and I'm listening to this, like oftentimes people go, for a lot of the same reasons you just described, into real estate, because they're seeking freedom. They want to be their own boss. The startup cost, just so you know, in real estate is very, very low. That's why we have so many entrants into real estate every single year. Right. And the fail rate is close to 80%. The rate just got published through,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, through Maryland Association of Realtors in conjunction with the National Association of Realtors, the fail rate is 80% over the last 3 years. So in the average agent, 58% have sold 0 homes last year.
Wow.
So, but they all come into the market for the same reason and they all leave for the same reason, and very few do all the business. So is there more positivity? Tell me there's more positivity in the franchise world than in the real estate world.
Absolutely. Yeah. In the franchise world, the biggest thing with the franchise world is finding the right franchise. And I think too many people, they're, first time business owners, they rush into it. But if you sit down and work with doesn't have to be myself, although I'd love to work with you, a franchise consultant, and really break down what the business looks like, it is absolutely amazing. You definitely stack the odds in your favor, right? You have a proven business model. It's been proven to work in multiple states. As the brand gets larger, you start to get the national accounts. You start to get better economies of scale, start to cut back your expenses. The AI revolution in franchising is that they're absolutely killing it. Right. They're reinvesting in their own platforms. They're cutting. We have brands with call centers that have 200. The AI agent could take 250 calls at any given point in time, while only manning it with 2 or 3 employees in the actual office itself. So it definitely, I call it an unfair advantage. It definitely gives you and helps you scale given that proven model. And the way to grow these businesses is simply, hey, I want to buy more territory. I want to buy another location. And those are ways to expand. So absolutely, if you find the right franchise, and don't fall in love with the product or service. That's the other biggest mistake. You're not going to buy a franchise because you love their burgers or sandwiches. You can start any business and buy all the burgers you want.
Sure.
Find a business that really takes advantage of your skill set, that has a proven path to say, I don't mind putting those hours in up front, but year 2, I want to be working from home. I don't want to be in the office very often. And I want to have everything kind of automated and systems in place. Those are the questions people aren't asking. And I encourage for anyone listening, ask, what is the ideal situation? What is the average time frame? And which franchisees can I speak with that I could dive in a little bit deeper? So absolutely, franchising is it's changed my life. I'll tell you my success story. My success story is simple. People talk about their Bentleys and their Ferraris, and they're posting all this nonsense online. My success story is that I'm 47 years old, been self-employed 20 years. I've never missed a soccer game, became a soccer coach. I challenge you, how many people can actually say that in 2 decades, they've never missed a family event, a dance recital? So to me, that's true success. Do I envy people that make a lot of money? Sure. We all like to make money, and I've done well financially, but why am I going to get into a business where maybe my neighbor is a multimillionaire and he's working 100 hours a week? I don't envy that. That's not the life I want. Right. I have this ideal kind of life. I wrote it down and kind of worked in reverse to say, okay, what are the vehicles that can get me so that I can get to that working normal business hours and not missing those family events. So definitely do kind of why you're doing this, figure it out, because it is not easy. It does take time. There's definitely a learning curve, but so worth it long run if you can just stick it out that first year.
It's funny you say that. That was my reason for trying to be successful, is because success allows you to choose, what I refer to it as the best successful determination in terms of my life is choice. So when you have the ability to choose, I have the ability to choose to be here at this podcast rather than at another appointment. And like you, I have 3 kids and I coach all of the sports. I do soccer, basketball, and baseball. So that's my most important thing, and I will skip anything, but I work for myself. I think I go through a lot of headaches in order to have that choice and freedom. And so what you're saying is, yes, it's going to be a pain in the tail, but once you get going, it's similar. You'll have the freedom of choice if you do this correctly.
Absolutely. And it's not going to be overnight. You're not going to have time freedom day one. Right. So you're going to get the business up and running. There's a learning curve. You have to find the right staff. Be patient. It's not, I call year 1 the builder or the focus year. I talk about quite a bit. Focus on that business. Don't get distracted with 10 other businesses. Just focus on that one business, and focus on what's the goal here. And if it is time freedom, you better get those systems in place. It's not about working harder. You need to make sure that you could be replicated and you don't have to be chained to the office, chained to the desk constantly for the business to run.
Well, there's two things you pointed out that I want to at least highlight here. One is when you mentioned AI. And if you're listening to this and you're not nervous, if you're, let's call it a white collar worker, somebody that moves around a mouse for a living and enters keystrokes in a computer, you should be terrified because you will be the first to be replaced by AI. And if you listen to any of the experts out there, it's not necessarily something terrified that there will be zero jobs available, but the jobs will change. And what we do for a living will change. And it's potentially going to be an amazing positive thing for all of us, but it's going to be different. And what you just described is that instead of being terrified, if you have a position that's a traditional corporate job or a white collar job that is an office-based setting, starting to learn about being an entrepreneur, learning ways to be the owner of your own success and path is probably something, if you have never thought about, you better start thinking about it and positioning yourself so you're not irrelevant in a couple years, because it's not going to take 20, 30 years for this to happen. It's going to be in the next couple of years where seismic shifts are going to occur. And it sounds like, it's just, this should be something everyone starts to consider, as opposed to just sitting there assuming that your job will be around because you're such a great person and everyone loves you. And I'm so good at my job. Like, well, guess what? Guess who doesn't call out sick? And guess who doesn't have, any other family issues? It's going to be the computer. The AI's taking over. And I think we should be excited by it. If you're a business owner, AI is amazing. Like, I'm excited as a business owner for margins to improve, for things not to get overlooked. I think experiences to the client could improve. And so these are just the thoughts that I think of when you're describing what you're describing. You just need to get prepared and be realistic.
Yeah, you have to be prepared. You can only control so many things, right? You can control your attitude. You can't control the stock market. You can't. There's a lot of things we can't control, but you can't control the attitude and just embrace AI. I'm not saying it's going to take over the entire business, but use it. That's going to be kind of stepping up the playing field. If everyone's using it, everyone's posting a lot more often. So I say embrace it. If you are looking at a franchise, ask the franchisor, how are you taking advantage of AI? There's millions of dollars being reinvested. I mean, you buy a franchise, technically you are, you're investing in AI technically, right? They're working on ways to make you more efficient. I was talking with a few CEOs, and they'll do a podcast. They'll strip the audio from the podcast and throw it into the AI, and it creates training manuals. It creates live on demand. What do you call it? When they get stuck on a job site, there was a roofing company, and it uses the audio, creates videos, it troubleshoots. That's the word I was looking for. Helps you troubleshoot when a technician's stuck at a job site or a franchisee, because it may be 8, 9 o'clock at night. The office may be closed, but you need access to that information. So it's amazing what it's doing, but it's also really cutting back on the costs. Via call centers, via the marketing alone, right. Paid ads, the AI is able to shift the ads based off of performance and clicks before you have a couple hours to review the information. So it's absolutely amazing. And the AI and the tech, I'll give you another example. We have roofing companies where drones are flying over homes and looking for roof damage. It has infrared looking for heat loss before a storm. It can actually track and scan an entire neighborhood. Wow. Before and after a storm, and say, hey, well, we have videos and photos before and after. You definitely had some damage from the hailstorm or the hurricane. So it's pretty crazy.
Well, all that sounds exciting, but help me understand, because what we haven't gotten to is what's the potential. So give me an idea of a realistic expectation, because I can tell you in real estate, when I interview people that want to start a career in real estate, everyone has this magical number. And by the way, this number hasn't changed since I was in college over 20 years ago. For some reason, this number still exists. I need to make at least $100,000 a year. That's the number. That was my magical number when I was in college. I thought I would be rich if I could do that. And it seems to me that's everybody's mindset. I got to make at least 100,000. Explain to me what's a realistic opportunity. I know there's literally tens of thousands, if not more, of franchises. But what does it cost minimum that you see to kind of average to the high end to get in? And then what's a realistic expectation in terms of either business revenue or additional assets that you would own that one day you can sell off? Like, give me the financial piece.
Yeah, so on the finances, I would say anything non-brick and mortar. So a home-based service business, maybe it's business coaching, maybe it's roofing or cleaning. You have a range of about 100 to 300,000. That's a good, healthy range. And the reason that you have that range is that some businesses will require zero staff, like business coaching. Well, you'll outsource your coaches via 1099 contractors, and then you have a company that does water and smoke restoration. They have the trucks, they have the equipment. So obviously that's going to be the variable. And that usually includes startup in the first 90 days of operation. So that's a good healthy range between 1 and 300,000. Do some go over or some under? Yes.
Well, can you borrow that money? Can you get a SBA loan, a Small Business Association loan for a franchise?
Yes.
So
yep, absolutely. We work with companies like Benetrends, and I would tell you that the three most popular funding options have been, number one, retirement rollovers. If you have an old traditional IRA or are leaving your job, you can use those 401k assets to fund the franchise.
There's no penalty associated with that?
Absolutely not. Benetrends created the Rob's ROBS rollover business startup back in 1978. They do all the reporting for you. They set up the C corporation for you. It needs to be done in a certain way, and you just have to have your reporting in order. But you're able to use basically take your money out of the stock market and reinvest your business.
Wow,
that's been extremely popular. Takes all of about 30 days, depending on how quickly you can get those assets. Very popular way if you qualify and have those funds available. For those that don't have the retirement, or maybe they're keeping their jobs, the SBA has funded quite a few, essentially a government-backed loan, 20 to 30% down of the project. So in a 200K franchise investment, you're looking at 40 to 60,000 down and getting funding for the rest. A little bit longer of a process,
right?
But if you're okay with a loan, sometimes it's a combination of those two, depending how much is available, how much you've been approved for, and then there's dozens of options.
Well, just real quick on the SBA loan, on that small business loan, from my understanding, that's much easier to get approved for that because you have a proven system, a model. I'm buying into something that I can show you, look at the model that I'm going into. There's 100 others just like this that are very successful. This is the standard. As opposed to if you and I want to have a pizza shop and we've never done this before, that's a lot harder to prove that you should, give us the loan.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, the companies like Benetrends will help with the business plan. They'll use the franchise agreement to make the case because they want to get you the best rates. They want to get you the best overall experience, maybe even a line of credit tacked on to the SBA loan. So absolutely, you have that business plan and you have some history via the franchisor, so it makes it a lot easier.
Got it. Well, that's interesting. So get back to real quick, because everyone wants to know about the money. So what can I earn? What's a realistic expectation? Can I make $100,000 a year? Can I make more than that? Is it the first year you break even? Like what do most people come into you either asking? Because this is the conversation you have. They're saying, I have a family, I have 2 kids, whatever. I have expenses. What can I make doing this?
Yeah, it's all over the map depending on how you're running this business. So if you're looking at a business, so we'll call it a expense reduction business, there's really not much expense to launch the business. You're looking at potentially, we'll call it in that lower range, closer to the $100,000 all-in range. And there's not many expenses. You're essentially going to the Chamber of Commerce. Maybe you're funding it with $20,000 to $30,000 out of pocket via the SBA loan. So we look at cash on cash return, right? Putting that 20 to 30K down, funding the rest. Maybe that's a couple clients to break even, but you can absolutely make, really sky's the limit when it comes to franchises. What I will say is you'll hear different margins. I can make 20%, I can make 30. And people say, well, I'd rather go with a higher margin than lower margin business. And where that gets a little bit confusing is we want to also make sure the volume is there to support it. Because in the cleaning business, you tend to have lower margins, but higher volumes. Whereas other businesses, the profitability, the margins are greater, but the AUV, the average unit volume, tends to be a little bit less. So you can absolutely make as much as you'd like with the franchise. Now, if you open up one territory, what I advise is going to the franchisees and saying, okay, what is the average franchisee making per territory? So again, this is kind of working in reverse. If they're telling you 100,000, you're hearing 200,000, which can definitely be done. Maybe you take an average, a blended average, we'll call it 150. Now you factor in, okay, 150 is the average. How many territories do I need to make my goal of 300K a year? And that number will be 2. So you can kind of work in reverse to figure out what the average franchisee makes. I don't consider myself average, never have. So you can always go on the higher end and say, well, I'm going to make 200,000, but you're going to go in and just say, what is the market penetration? How much business can I do? How many businesses can I do business with? And in many cases, certain industries have sky's the limit. Expense reduction allows you to work with clients all over the United States, whereas a roofing franchise will have you work with a couple zip codes in your market.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, now all the terms you just said, I have a business degree and I've been in the business world my whole life. I'm a huge nerd. This is the stuff I listen to for fun on podcasts. So this is not, I can track you is what I'm saying. I think a lot of people might just be so overwhelmed with the sheer amount of information you just shared. How do they get over that? They like the idea. They're hard workers. They're capable humans. They might have the savings or the ability to get the loan to get this started. If they're overwhelmed by everything you just said, how do they start this process to see if it's an opportunity for them? Is it the reason you have a job in that sense, to be able to break it down to figure out what the fit is? Because I feel like these are choppy waters to navigate for a first timer, especially if you're not familiar with all these business terms. And even just getting an SBA loan, I don't think a lot of people would even know where to start.
Yeah, our process is very streamlined, and we simplify it. This conversation is blending about 3 calls, right? We covered different topics. So if I had to break it down in steps, number 1, forget about the franchises, forget about the SBA. It's all irrelevant. Why do you want to own a business? And that's our first call. Is franchising a good fit? What is your expectation of a franchise? I'll give you an example. Someone called me, young guy called me up and said, I heard you can't lose money with a franchise. Well, obviously you can.
Oh yeah.
It's a business. It's not it's not a CD or whatever else is guaranteed out there. So we'll set the expectation of what a franchise is. We'll talk about investment ranges and things like that, because you do need money to invest in a franchise. You need skin in the game. Once we have that conversation, we have a second call, and the second call outlines, what does your ideal business look like? So we don't care what's available. We just care about, what is your role? Can you run this full-time or part-time? What are your assets? What's your liquidity and net worth situation look like? What's your skill set? What are you good at? We'll touch on funding, where I will immediately introduce you to our funding partner. And that's a separate conversation where they'll go through all your options when it comes to funding, and funding only. So that's kind of done on the side. And then we regroup based on those findings. Our third call, I grab all the information. And again, we always start off with Q&A in the beginning of the calls. And then we'll say, you know what, based off of all the things you want in the business and all the things you don't want in the business, these are 3, and this is to answer your question, these are 3 ideas, 3 brands that check off all the boxes that I feel you will love, that I will have you continue doing your due diligence, speaking with the brands, speaking with the franchisees, and then speaking with the founder. So we break it up into kind of 3 different sections so that they can get educated on the brand. They need to hear the story from the company. No one's going to tell their story better than the company themselves. So I want them to really spend the time learning about it, talking to existing franchisees in their market to really understand what the average day in a life looks like. So we have weekly calls from here on out. We answer questions. We make a short list of questions to follow up with the franchisor. And every time they're having that conversation, we're starting to rule those 3 brands maybe down to 2 and eventually down to 1, getting super selective on those companies that really stand out, that would be the perfect fit, would be the perfect partner. There are a lot of tricks that I coach each and every one of my candidates. And one of those tricks is, if you find the perfect brand, it checks off all the boxes, and you meet the founder, and the founder does not have a vision going forward, what are you working on? Talk to me about the next 5 or 10 years. That's a major red flag. That may be a reason not to work and partner with that specific franchise if they don't have that vision going forward. So there are a lot of questions, a lot of advice that I give on these calls that they can bring back in those conversations with the franchise owners and the franchisees. We cover the terms, we cover the things like that. The franchise companies will supply you that franchise agreement. And in many cases, those acronyms and terms are all laid out as well. So they'll definitely assist you there. But we work very closely so that we can navigate those waters, learn as much as we can. But ultimately, the big question is, do you see yourself working with this franchise and partnering with that franchise for the next decade? That this is a partnership for the next decade. Right. If you don't, if your gut says no, and there's a lot of red flags, maybe it's time to move past, or make sure to address those concerns before moving forward.
I'll tell you, I might have named this podcast by accident, but I can tell you what you just described is my job. It's all roads certainly lead to real estate in your world. You just described my job. I was writing it down as you were describing your process with people. First thing that you discussed is motivation. Why are you moving, right? It's like that. It's the why, because if the why is not strong enough, nothing else matters. Great. If you just don't like your boss, but you don't want to work for yourself, the rest doesn't matter, right? So for me, that's the same thing. If it's not worth moving, we don't need to move. Moving sucks. And being a business owner, there's aspects that are really challenging. You went to needs analysis next. What do they need from all of this? And then you finalized it and went into the financing or budget in my world, or funding in your world. And then you finalized the whole package with, in my world, I create a home search, or I create a plan for you to sell your home. And in your case, you're actually creating a business search. Right. And so the way I make a living, and I'm bringing this up for a reason, so I make a living when something transacts. I only get paid when something transacts. And if no one ever buys it, or no one ever sells their home, that's just the cost of doing business in my world for me. Is that similar to how someone could afford your services? Is it free of charge up front, or do they pay a consulting fee, or do you get paid when they invest in a franchise? How does that work? So someone can know, can they afford your expertise?
Similar. It's exactly the same as on your end. No one will pay me anything to work with me to find their franchise. If you end up buying a franchise, we are paid a referral fee from the franchisor. And that's it. That's the only. So if you, whether you go work with a franchise coach or find the brand directly online, your investment doesn't change whatsoever. Obviously, working with a coach, they're going to bring a lot to the table, asking those important questions. But there's no cost aside from time to work with me.
That's very. I mean, if you ever considered real estate, I could get you a job. It sounds like we're doing the same thing.
Very similar. It is very similar.
Yeah, it's pretty shocking. So now, does everybody work with you, or are there certain franchises that won't work with consultants? Or some of the big boys, let's call it, maybe they don't choose to do this because there's a waiting list to get in a Chick-fil-A, for example? Does that make sense? Are there certain ones that are willing to participate, or does everybody participate?
Yeah, so I'm partnered with a company by the name of FranChoice, a national company, been around for over 25 years, actually our 26th year. And we will pre-screen companies. So we have three employees, that will pre-screen companies on a daily basis. Some companies do not work with any franchise coaches, and that's okay. But they'll do a full analysis. We'll make sure that that they're national, that they're offered across the country, that they have room for growth. Sometimes companies are 99% sold. Probably doesn't make sense to work with them since they have limited markets. But any companies that pass the pre-screen, we will work with those specific brands. Again, it doesn't take the place of doing your own due diligence, but that pre-screen involves things like a quick review of the franchise agreement. They'll speak with franchisees, the franchisor, and have an interview asking, again, kind of going back to the conversation with the founder, what is the growth plan? How do you plan to go from 50 to 100 franchisees? And how will you increase the support for those individuals? Right. So FranChoice will do that pre-screen for us. And it's an evolving thing. Right. Brands are being added and removed throughout time. And it makes our job a lot easier. So we're working with a smaller universe, although still large, but ultimately showing our studies have shown 3 brands is kind of the max people can handle all at once. Although people may say, I can handle more. We've noticed when I've had people look at 4 or 5 brands, they get overwhelmed. Right. The brands start to bleed, with one another. They get them confused. So 3 brands that are different, so you can kind of compare and contrast them, seems to be the right number.
Sure.
And then worst case, a brand has to get removed. We can always replace it with something else. But it reduces the overwhelm, and it just keeps it a lot more easier to manage for myself as well as our candidates.
Well, tell me about the outlook. We've already discussed how AI is coming in. How do you anticipate the next 5, 10, 20 years, if you had a crystal ball? I know franchises, I believe in general, have been around, since the 50s, somewhere around there. And so they've been around for at least 70 years. So they're here, and to my knowledge, they've grown tremendously in the last 20 years. It feels like it. I feel like everywhere I go, if you travel anywhere in this country, all I see are franchises, right? I see the same strip mall in every city in America, every single one of them, at least here in Baltimore, from the owners, right, of this commercial spaces. All they want are to give it to brands that have a track record of success. You don't see the mom and pop shops, at least the brick and mortar stores. And so I don't know if that's something that you're excited about, in the sense that in 10 years that you'll be even stronger, or are there headwinds? Are there concerns? I can tell you in real estate, there's tremendous concerns. I believe our headcount in real estate will be cut in half in the next 5 to 10 years. So I think that's coming quickly. Do you feel the same about your industry?
In franchising, I see franchises. I see extreme growth simply because, going back to real estate, the landlords. I have a startup idea. We're going to make this type of food versus, a chain, a McDonald's or whatever the brand is. So. McDonald's is a bad example, but we'll call it even a Chick-fil-A. So the landlords want to do business with proven brands. And a lot of these landlords, right, there's this idea of consolidation. So if you're dealing with some larger companies, maybe they have properties in all 50 states available, they'll have those national partnerships with some of these larger companies, and it's just much easier to do business. There's this consolidation of companies that are doing the build outs, the contractors and things like that. So I think the growth is there. I think just the idea of these franchise companies growing and decreasing costs with the reinvestment back into AI has been huge. Right. The biggest thing that I'm excited for is also the national accounts. As these brands get larger and are located in all 50 states, for example, we work with a painting franchise, and they're working with some of the larger retailers out there as the preferred vendor. So any franchisee that ends up buying a franchise and there's a job that needs to get quoted, you're the first company that they contact. So I think growth is there. We talk about real estate. For every one brand you recognize in a strip mall, there's 5 service brands you never heard of. A lot of our service brands are kind of behind the scenes. They're not a household name because they're not meant to be, right? They're in water and smoke mitigation, which is a big one, a non-sexy business that works with plumbers and getting people back into their homes as soon as possible. So they're
that's a high margin business too. I've had to hire those folks.
Very high margin business, very, very low staff, high margin, but there's additional hoops to jump through, right? You need the proper licensing, the proper training.
I could tell you everything you've said. When I go back to what I think the next, 5, 10, 20 years is going to look like with the disruption in just the workplace in general, I want to, as Elon Musk would say, move atoms. He describes the last business that'll be disrupted fully are the folks that move atoms. That's like, my brother owns a landscaping business. It's a big 100+ employee business. He does landscaping. He installs pools. He transforms backyards. Beautiful projects. It's great. He says, I still pick a shovel up and dig dirt. Right. That's the business. Now he himself isn't doing it anymore, but the business is basically moving one thing to the other location and building physical objects. He believes he's going to have a little longer to have a job than some other folks, like I mentioned before, that are simply inputting data into a spreadsheet. I mean, you go to a McDonald's. I was driving through. We went to a ski resort with the family over the break, and you go to McDonald's. I'd never go there, but it's a kiosk. I can't even see a human. Right. I didn't interact with a human. Right. And I'm like, where are these people? Where are the jobs? And so they're already being replaced in meaningful numbers. And so I would invest my time and energy, and I want you to correct me if I'm wrong, into things like a abatement company potentially, or something that has a physical component to it versus a purely spreadsheet or financial, analysis type company, something that could be very easily disrupted.
Absolutely. And that's the thing. I mean, there's still going to be From a service standpoint, companies like expense reduction, helping small businesses, yes, it's behind the scenes and analysis, but you have franchise companies, big teams, right? Hundreds of people doing the analysis for you, helping small businesses cut their expense. It works in an up or down market. Going back to the water and smoke mitigation, you can't outsource this, right? You can't outsource it to another country. This is stuff that needs to get done. People need to get back into their homes. So
Right.
there's so much opportunity out there. I think how to go about getting the business is also a big one. Nothing is going to ever replace everyone's talking about AI, but these conversations, the one-on-one, the human-to-human element is always going to be extremely important, and that is never going to change. If anything, it becomes more important as a way of kind of standing out amongst all the noise and the AI and the posting and all that other stuff. So
Right.
that relationship you have, that community involvement, that doesn't go away. If anything, that becomes even more important. So
Right.
I think I feel like it's kind of going back to the way things were years ago, where it was all about reputation within the community. That company could still have, and utilize AI and very few employees, but ultimately, they want to do more business with less resources. If I had to kind of
Right.
want to grow, but not have to
Well,
have.
I want to be in the human experience business. I feel like that industry will be large. It'll be huge. I think we'll have less demands physically at work potentially, but you're going to have a business. I think the opportunity is massive to have a human experience. I think interacting with a human is going to be something that people pay for extra. Like I could tell you, I go somewhere, I want a human to serve me my meal. I don't know if I'm interested, if I was at a fine dining experience, to have a robot bring it over. I don't know. So I think, when you go, I'm planning a Disney trip with the family. I'm like, I want a human to interact with our family as opposed. So I think the experiences that we're going to have. And so that's why I say, I don't know if it's all doom and gloom. I think it's going to be a transformation. I think if the experts are correct that I listen to, GDP in the country will explode. I believe the economy in general is going to go wild in the next 5 to 10 years, not down. I think it's going to we're at all-time highs currently with the stock market, and I don't think that's going down anytime soon. All the leading indicators suggest it's going much higher, which is bizarre. We've been in an up market for a very long time.
Yeah, it's what is it? The stock market and the economy are two different things. And I came from Wall Street. That's how I cut my teeth and got into sales. I was 19, Series 7 licensed advisor, and it comes down to sentiment, right? Money's still being dumped into the market. People are putting money away in their 401ks. There is a trend. The younger generation, they don't feel the same about the stock market. Someone introduced me to the term financial nihilism. And that's the idea that they don't have faith in the dollar. They don't have as much faith in the stock market. That would be a disruptor because we're putting less in there. But as long as things, continue as is, and there's this positive sentiment that yes, it's crazy times, but things will get better. I don't see. I mean, I'm a big investor. I invest my money first, max out the retirement before anything else, before I invest in real estate or anything else. So I'm bullish. I've always been bullish. I'm a student of Uncle Warren Buffett. So I've studied him in grad school, past couple decades. Big supporter of Berkshire.
Wow, incredible. Well, I hope this inspires some people. I think, if anything, I want people to have their eyes open and recognize that there are opportunities beyond just working a traditional 9 to 5. That's why I wanted to have you here, is because this is something I personally had no prior knowledge of. And what I do, it's kind of very limited. I would love to find an opportunity, if I were going to hire you tomorrow, to somehow include a franchise opportunity with what my knowledge and passion is, which is real estate. And if I could have a brick and mortar presence that I could own, that I could invest in, as well as have a cash flow portion, which is the job itself, a service or something that could cash flow that's resistant to the ups and downs of a traditional market. I don't know what you had, but if you were interviewing me, that's exactly what I'd be telling you. I want something when I exit in 5 or 10 years that I could sell, not just the franchise. Hopefully that's worth something, maybe my database, whatever I've built. But additionally, I want the real estate asset. So I don't know if you've helped anybody with that, but that's where my head goes when I hear about these type of opportunities.
Yeah, most people that have got into the brick and mortar side have not owned the real estate, and there's no right or wrong here. It's another separate set of income, right? There's an opportunity cost in everything we do. So if they're not investing in the real estate, are they buying another 2 or 3 locations? Or are they sticking with one location and owning the building itself? Or one is not better than the other. It's diversification, and it's not a bad idea. I think they advise us to separate those under separate legal entities. But a lot of the people I work with do not own the actual real estate, but you can, right. And that's it's neither positive or negative. It's really just another investment on your diversification. Some people would prefer having more locations and just leasing. Other people would have fewer locations and owning the real estate. So they both work. What I do want to say is for everyone listening is that create that safety net, right? There's a lot of uncertainty in the market. So, if you do one thing, or there's one takeaway, is contact someone, look at your financials, figure out kind of, what happens if I lose my job tomorrow. It's great to be proactive, right? Control your attitude, be proactive, look for a business, whether it be that side hustle, that franchise, that startup that you can start on the side and then eventually transition full-time. Maybe you get laid off sooner than later. Maybe you never get laid off, but creating that safety net is going to be critical, I think, in this environment. Not everyone's giving any type of severance. Maybe you get a few weeks full pay, but take control of that. That's something you can control, and it's being proactive. So take a look at other investment vehicles. You start to slowly get into them, and then maybe, hey, who knows, in 6 months, maybe you can leave the job on your own terms and run the business full time. So that's something you can definitely set up with a franchise, as long as that franchise can be run part time. And I encourage you to at least set up that conversation, that call with me, and we could definitely figure out if the fit's there.
Well, I appreciate your time. I think you've outlined it extremely well. And once again, everybody, if you would like to see and listen and learn more, Giuseppe has a book. It's free of charge. He's willing to give that to folks. What's the best way to reach you if they want to reach out and have a consult, or maybe just get the book and learn more about it in more detail?
Yep. My name is hard to spell, so it's my initials, GG, thefranchiseguide.com. And you got a couple options. You can download the book under resources. It's free. You can watch my podcast. We have 170 episodes covering any topic imaginable. And then there's a book a call button on top right side of the screen. And it's a 20-minute call. We'll sit down. We'll talk about, franchises and business ownership and answer your questions. And if the fit's there, we'll talk about next steps and what those next calls look like. Again, no cost for any of the resources for our services. So I encourage you at least to, no silly questions. If you just have a question you want answered, we'll jump on a call. Maybe we figure out it's a good fit and the timing isn't right, or maybe the timing is right, and we'll talk about next steps and timeframes. More than glad to help.
Well, that sounds wonderful. So once again, thank you for your time. I know I learned something today, and hopefully everyone listening did as well. So thanks once again for your time, and I hope to see you around, and I'm going to look into this a little bit more. I do promise you that. I'm not going to be as ignorant on this topic in the future, I promise.
Awesome. I appreciate it. It was fun. I really appreciate the invite, and looking forward to the next conversation.
All right. Thank you.
And big thank you to our sponsor, First Home Mortgage. You can check them out at firsthome.com.